mark May, I forget the date, the Octane event is May 18th? May 18th.
Is this the Innovation Showcase?
It's the Innovation Showcase in VC and the OC, so May 18th. So I hope that you come to the incubator and you come to the Innovation Showcase and get that launched. So with that, we'll start the proceedings today. Ronnie Hanekak, the Director of our Tech Transfer Office and the Associate Vice Chancellor for Technology Transfer, will do the interview today, and she'll introduce Greg Weiss. Thank you. Please help me welcome them. Thanks.
The format of this is I'm going to be asking him some questions, and he's going to be telling about himself, but we'll try to leave some time at the end so that you all can ask Greg questions that you might want to ask that I didn't ask. So good afternoon and welcome to today's Entrepreneurs Forum. Today's forum is sponsored by Octane at UCI, Office of Technology Alliances, UCI Extension, and of course Cal IT2, we're in their space. I'm Ronnie Hanekak. I'm from UC Irvine's Office of Technology Alliances. We manage intellectual property for the campus if you're not already familiar with us, from the conception of an idea to an invention disclosure to marketing and licensing your technology for commercial development. And we manage about more than 800 inventions for the campus. The office also assists faculty with startup companies. We license technology to the startup companies, and we can also put you in touch with the business community that can help you with business plans and space needs and other needs that the company might have. Today's program will introduce you to one of UCI's innovators, Greg Weiss, his career path, experiences with industry, and also his perspective on technologies and how they fit into the future. It's my pleasure to introduce Gregory Weiss. He's one clue as to his broad interest is that he is professor of chemistry, but also molecular biology and biochemistry. His approach to science interfaces with many different fields, including engineering. And he's received numerous scholarships and awards. I'm not going to go through them all here today. He's distinguished himself not only in research at UC Irvine, but also in teaching, which is very, very nice. We are a teaching university too. And he is co-director of the Chemical and Structural Biology program of the Child Family Comprehensive Cancer Center, and he also serves on the scientific advisory boards of several companies. Professor Weiss is also co-chair of the Global Young Academy, and we'll be talking a little bit about that later. So Greg, you seem to have started out as a chemist. And I don't know if you were born a chemist, or if you could tell us how you...
I think I was born a chemist.
You might have been, I know.
So when I was a little kid, I was fascinated by the periodic table. My mom actually is the one who showed me a periodic table at the age of 6. And
age of 6.
At the age of 6.
Did it have little animals on it, or was it the real period?
No, it was the real thing. And she told me that everything in the universe is on this table, and I was so blown away by that. I couldn't believe it. I kept asking her, well, what about this book? What about where's the book on it? No, the carbon in the paper and oxygen, all of that's on the periodic table, and I was just that left me in awe. And so I wanted to learn more, and I've always wanted to learn more, and I just kept always wanting to learn more. So I think I was a chemist from the very beginning.
And were your parents chemists? Or?
My father was actually a chemistry major and then became a physician.
Oh, so that was a physician.
Right, which meant I had also a great chemistry set as a kid as well. And this led to both fun adventures and misadventures. And fortunately, I have all my fingers still, which amazes me to this day.
So you did blow a few things up?
Just small things, but
not live things.
No, nothing like that. And I made it through that period of my life, and I wonder whether there's other scientists who are kids that are now labeled anarchistic pyromaniacs that don't get a chance to do that stuff. And I think it was a really important part of my childhood, of just exploration, of just trying different things.
And you weren't pressured to become a physician? Sometimes doctors want their sons to be doctors. And
I think I was definitely headed towards the course of wanting to become a physician when I was a kid, and I spent a lot of time volunteering at hospitals, and I developed this tremendous aversion to the way they smell. You step into the hospital, they all smell the same, and I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden, one day I just realized, I can't go back anymore. This is just not my thing. And I started thinking about other things. And about that point, I was entering college. So yeah, but I think you're right. My father definitely was enthusiastic about having me become a physician. So I think we even joked about joining the practice or something.
received your bachelor's degree in chemistry.
Right. Right.
And that was from UC Berkeley.
Right.
And can you talk a little bit how that experience might have influenced your career?
Yeah, so at the point that I'm thinking about having second thoughts about becoming a physician, I was taking this class called organic chemistry, and it was 8 a.m., but the professor just loved the stuff. He would show up at 8 a.m., he'd come bouncing across the stage, and I was hooked. I thought, well, if this guy loves this stuff, then it must be worth, and he's this famous professor, this must be worth learning. It got me, and then I started thinking about it more, and I just became absolutely immersed and fascinated by it. And at that point, I decided I wanted to be able to teach this class someday. And the amazing part is, I taught it this morning. 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. I was there. And,
lucky.
yeah, really
But I know you love it.
Yeah. So anyway, so as an undergraduate, I had this tremendous love of chemistry. And fortunately, at University of California, you're given all these great opportunities to pursue your dreams. And should we talk a little bit about the project that we're on?
Sure.
Okay, so as an undergraduate, I wrote a computer program for discovery of drugs. And so the idea is, if you have some pharmaceutical that is a pretty effective drug, and you want to come up with the next generation drug, one strategy that would work is if you have a similarly shaped molecule. And so while I was an undergraduate in Paul Bartlett's laboratory at UC Berkeley, I wrote this little program with him that would let us predict molecular shapes. And the amazing part was it took off. We sold it to something like 200 different pharmaceutical companies.
So you had a product earlier on.
It was a product, yeah, an actual product. And the great thing about University of California is they returned back to the inventors some portion of the proceeds, actually a substantial portion. And the other amazing part was that my professor shared it with me, an undergraduate at the time.
Nice.
And it was amazing. It was really nice. And so the money started rolling in when I was a graduate student. I mean, I'm not talking like enough money to make me rich. This certainly didn't make me rich. But still, as a graduate student, living right on the edge, this made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And this became really influential.
Right,
So.
and I think the University of California tries to incentivize people with their inventions to disclose them and help them become commercialized. And one of the ways it does that is by sharing income with the inventors.
I think it's
So
good.
there is a regent's policy, it's a university policy, and the inventors, for the most part, receive 35% of the income that their inventions bring back to the campus.
And this includes the graduate students, undergraduates, and
Whoever's an
postdocs.
inventor, split between the
I
inventors.
see you out there.
And also to the inventors department, so 15% also goes to the inventors department.
Which is-
And you can get access to that for your lab, so it's to stimulate more
That's neat.
interest in innovation and bringing your technologies from the bench to practical application. So at some point, you started to apply your interest in chemistry to the field of biology. Can you talk a little bit about how that interface
Right.
came about?
Right. So we were applying this ring structure, this thing that would predict ring structures of pharmaceuticals, to a compound called FK506. This is early 90s, and this drug had just been its use as an immunosuppressant for suppressing the immune system and allowing liver transplants had just taken off. So this was sort of a golden age at the dawn of liver transplantation. So this drug was incredibly influential. And so I was applying my program to understand how this drug works. And while I was doing this, I was reading all these great papers from biologists, such as the guy I ended up working for as a graduate student. And the more I learned about this, the more fascinated I became that this idea that you can have a pharmaceutical that gets into the body and then specifically inhibits one and only one target and then suppresses the immune system, which then allows transplantation of livers. That really impressed me. So that's sort of what got me interested in biology.
Mm-hmm. And this was doing your PhD, right?
Yes, that was when I was an undergraduate, and then I went and did a PhD with the professor who was publishing all this stuff about immunosuppressants. His name is Stuart Schreiber, and he's actually going to be here on campus next week. Highly recommended.
Yes, he's very famous. He's a great scientist.
He's a great scientist. He's going to give a great seminar. So.
Okay. And for your postdoctoral studies, you decided to go to industry rather than continue with an academic
Right.
institution postdoc.
Right.
Can you talk about what
Right.
it was like making that decision. And I know you're a lot younger than I am, but at the time that I was looking at these things, there was a lot of pressure not to go to industry for a postdoc
That's
to
true.
get experience in academics.
That's true. A lot
and
of
I don't know
people
if you
told
felt
me.
that at your time.
Oh, absolutely.
But you were
I had-
working for some high-end scientists. And
Yeah. Well, I did have. I had friends who told me that your career is over once you go to industry.
Oh, dear.
So I definitely heard that, but I proved them wrong. Anyway, but I was, as a graduate student working in Stuart Schreiber's laboratory, I was trying to make large collections of different molecules. And then we'd sift through these collections to identify new drugs, new immunosuppressants. I was specifically focused on how the immune system figures out whether a cell has been infected with a virus, and I wanted to control this for autoimmune disease. And it was a lot of work. I think my students have looked at my publication record from my graduate time, and they know I have a lot more failures than successes as a graduate student. And I started realizing, gee, there's got to be a better way to make combinatorial libraries. And this technique called phage display had just been described in sort of the late 80s. So this is a technique where you get the cells to make the molecules for you, rather than you doing all of the synthetic chemistry of mixing the molecules. Instead, you get bacteria and viruses to do all the hard work. And I started looking around for what are the best labs that are doing phage display. And I got one of the best labs happened to be in industry. Mm-hmm. So my advisor, a guy named Jim Wells at Genentech, happened to be at Genentech, and if he was at University of Alaska at Fairbanks, I would have followed him to Alaska and just got a warmer coat. So, but so that's what sort of got me towards industry. I think I was really lucky though. Genentech was an amazing place to do a postdoc, and had this tremendous freedom to be innovative and to come up with new things. And the postdocs actually are given the tremendously privileged job of doing something that no one else in industry gets to do, which is not worry about making products. So the scientists have to be focused on, let's get a product, let's get a new antibody, a new drug, a new therapeutic that we're going to get out into the clinic. And then along the way, the scientists are turning up all this interesting science, right? So they would hand it off to the postdocs to track down. And so, yeah, this was great. So I don't know, anyone who tells you that doing a postdoc in industry is a disaster for your career is totally crazy, because I think you can really do great stuff.
You probably have to pick the right company, and you chose a company that emphasized publications.
That's right.
And research.
That's right. That's true.
So you weren't going to be a cog in the wheel of a product.
That's true. And something else I also tell students who are considering doing a postdoc in industry is to pick the right projects as well. You have to choose. You have to be sort of your own agent in choosing projects that are publishable, because the scientists are constantly sort of farming out these projects, and some of them are really important from a standpoint of therapeutics. But if you get involved in one of those, it will never get published because the lawyers will tie it up, and you won't be able to talk about it on your job talks when you leave there. And so you kind of have to choose the things that are just intellectually interesting and not necessarily going to lead to therapeutic. So, and you know what? That's a good strategy for the company as well.
Can you speak a little bit to the pluses and minuses of working within a company? I know you were a postdoc there and that was mainly research, but you might have observed some other things.
Right. Well, the huge plus was, as a postdoc, I didn't have to worry about raising my own money.
Yes.
It was fantastic. So
money was no issue.
Practically, I figured out that if I stayed below about $300K per year, no one noticed.
Nice.
This was an amazing thing. I figured out that in a large company like Genentech, I could be really innovative, do new things, and as long as I was doing that, then they were happy. So as long as I kept them, as long as I was generating science, they were happy about that. The downside is I really started to miss students. I miss seeing students showing up every fall. There's an energy that we get on campus in the fall when the undergraduates, the new crop of undergraduates show up, and they sort of show up all bushy-eyed, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and they're ready to learn, and I just love that.
They take all the parking places.
They do take the parking places, and it gets more crowded on campus. But I love that. I just love the energy, and I also love teaching, and I miss that as well. I miss that component as well. So the pluses are enormous, and the minuses are there as well. So
did you find a collaborative spirit there?
Yes. Ronnie, I think I told you this, but let me just digress for a moment for the audience. About 6 months into my postdoctoral stint at Genentech, my advisor took me to breakfast. And I knew something was up because my advisor, Jim Wells, wasn't in the practice of taking us to breakfast. So he takes me to breakfast and says, "Greg, there's this Black Diamond run that I've always wanted to take. And Jim always spoke in ski terms, big skier.
Okay.
And so, and I'm thinking, wow, okay, we're headed to Tahoe, huh? And no, what he really meant was he was headed to start his own company. So he started Synesis Pharmaceuticals and left Genentech about 6 months into my postdoc. So I was basically left without an advisor. And I was really fortunate that I was able to work with another postdoc who was left behind, and the two of us networked like crazy because we had to basically find a niche for ourselves. We had to justify our existence to the company without, yeah, exactly. So we had no advisor. We had this terrific, well-equipped lab. I already said we had amazing funding, and we basically, our strategy, and this turned out to be really successful, is basically recruit other postdocs, other scientists to work for us. And so we did a sort of grassroots networking to set up collaboration after collaboration. We found people to do the DNA sequencing. I found other people to do the bioinformatics. We found other people to help us with the cloning, and someone else made all the buffers.
So you essentially built your own project team.
It was great, exactly, yeah.
Which is good, it's a good experience.
And it's one of the great things about an innovative company like Genentech is that they really encourage that. The last thing you want to do if you're at a company like that is to be off as an appendage all by yourself, because then it's easy just to lop it off and get rid of it. So you always want to be inter-networked with lots of different people. And I found that really easy to do at Genentech because they had all kinds of activities to encourage that sort of thing. There are all kinds of research offsites and retreats and things that would just encourage you to think about how you can get your stuff involved with other people. So it was really, really, really fun.
So this is a little bit of a digression, but you did experience that environment, and I wonder if there are things that management things or the way that industry was organized, or the way things were done that you apply to your own research programs here.
Well, I could tell you about an experiment I'm conducting this quarter.
Okay.
It's a management experiment that I'm conducting this quarter. I'm a strong believer in constantly reinventing yourself and constantly trying to get better. So crazy management experiment that we're trying this quarter that I adopted from Genentech is one of the things I really liked about being a scientist in industry is you get feedback on an annual basis, and they tell you exactly where you stand and what you're doing well and what you're doing wrong. And so this quarter, as my students know, we actually conducted annual reviews where I sat down with every student in the laboratory and told them, okay, here's what I like about you, and this is where I think your career is going. And here's the stuff that you absolutely need to change if you want to get to that next stage of your career. And then I handed them out evaluation forms and anonymously had them hand me back some very interesting advice on what I need to change.
Oh, okay,
and
so you got feedback.
I got feedback
how you're
from them.
doing as well.
Yeah, and this was actually, I think this was a successful experiment in the sense that I really learned a lot. I really learned, I found out, for example, that all the bad habits that my own advisor used when I was a graduate student, I've adopted. Everything that I would complain about from the bosses I've had in the past, I actually do. And it's really useful to get that kind of feedback. You can't get that honest feedback though unless you're willing to put yourself out there. And the truth is, you also have to have a little bit of thick skin. My wife is sitting in the back, knows that when I first got the reviews, I brought them home and I was like, I'm in trouble. And that was hugely informative. It was really, really useful experience. So that's one of the things I liked about.
Was the advice consistent with the feedback you get from your wife, or was it?
Funny you should mention that. It wasn't totally inconsistent, actually. But it's something that I saw when I was in industry. I really, really thought it was very effective. The getting honest feedback that's not grade inflated, that's where they're telling you, okay, here's where you rank in the company, is actually, I thought that was a tough experience, but I thought it was a really good experience as well. So, and it's something I'm trying to adopt in my own laboratory. And so far, so good. I think from what I've seen in the last couple of weeks, we've only done this has now been week 2. Yeah. So far, I think there's really positive energy from it. So,
it's good.
Yeah.
So you were at Genentech, and then you were talking about your advisor leaving, starting a company, and you didn't go with him.
Right. That was a tough
So you must
decision.
have been thinking.
I have I actually was almost totally confident that I was going to go and start Synesis Pharmaceuticals.
Sounds like an opportunity.
It was a great opportunity. And actually, as a graduate student, I took all these classes at Harvard Business School from people like Clay Christensen, who's like a professor of entrepreneurship.
Oh,
and,
so you were primed.
I was totally primed. In fact, my friend and I, as graduate students, wrote a business plan. We were totally sold on starting a company together. We had recruited a bunch of HBS students to do this. But at the moment that I had the opportunity, I have to confess, I pulled back from the brink.
Oh.
So I could have gone with Jim. We went to Redwood City. And we opened up this warehouse, empty warehouse. Just no benches. It was right next door to a junkyard. And Jim says, "Welcome to Synesis Pharmaceuticals." And at that moment, I had the toughest call of my career.
Employee number 2.
Employee, I would have been like number 4, perhaps. So that would have been good. Yeah. And they actually ended up doing okay.
Don't even look back.
I know. So, but it was a tough call. So I remember this is probably the most stressful part of my career. So my wife Kim and I spent a lot of time walking around our neighborhood and just talking about what our dreams are. What is our future? What do we see ourselves doing? Where do we want to be in 10 years? And at the end of it, I really wanted to be teaching students. I really wanted to be in front of a classroom, talking to students, training them on how to be scientists. And I was much more passionate about that than I was about working at even a startup company, which would have been the Nuclear Ultras experience. I would have loved to have done it, but it was a tough call. So, and I'm glad we did, Kim. So.
Well, you probably made a good choice. Weren't you the Teacher of the Year for the graduating class?
Oh, thanks.
One of the departments or one of the schools here?
Yeah, so the undergraduates voted me outstanding professor.
Yeah, so you must be good at it.
Thanks. So, thanks. But it's really fun. What can I say?
It's amazing to have the mixture of passion for teaching and passion for research.
Oh, thanks.
I think it's nice to have that.
Thanks.
And a professor here.
So it's one of the great things about the job.
Yeah.
So.
And so then you applied for university positions, academic positions,
right.
And you chose Irvine.
Right.
And hopefully you're happy.
Oh, I'm every day really happy. So, when I go visit some other university, I think, geez, I can't believe what great colleagues I have. I met some other place and you're eating dinner with somebody and they don't like talking to their other colleagues, so they badmouth their other guy. Come back here. This place is amazingly collegial. People get along really well. Our students are outstanding. I can't say enough good things about UCI, so I feel really lucky. But I did a full search. We sent out like 45 applications. It was, I went on some ridiculous number of interviews, and we almost ended up in Iowa. I can tell you, Ames, Iowa. We came really close, and I'm really happy to be here 4.5 miles from the ocean, and with this great group of colleagues in this innovative atmosphere. So I think it worked out really well.
So a lot of your work is via collaborations.
That's right.
Because you still are bringing in other expertise into the various projects and problems that you study.
Yes. That's been my philosophy for the longest time, I guess going back to my Genentech days. When I was a graduate student, I was off by myself, doing just entirely my own project. And I would tell you that was really unsatisfying. Because when a problem happened, there's only one person on the spot to solve the problem. And that's really, really frustrating. So after that, I wanted to basically set up problems where you're constantly working with other people. And by doing that, I feel like we can go further with those problems. If I bring in, say, Ed Robinson, an expert on HIV, to collaborate with us, and we're working on, say, HIV drug discovery, this is great, because that means then I don't have to worry about growing the HIV virus myself. I'm turning to the world's expert who happens to be here at UCI, and handing him our compounds, making doing our own synthesis, and handing him stuff to test. And it's just so much more satisfying, because then it means that we don't have to do every aspect of the project. So I would say almost every project in our laboratory involves a collaboration of some sort. So.
Can you give an example of one in particular?
Sure.
That interfaces with multiple disciplines?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the interface between electronics like this and the biotechnology world. So these are two technologies that have reached this very advanced state of development, yet never the twain shall meet, right? In biotechnology, proteins and molecules communicate by touch, right? Either the small molecule binds to the protein or doesn't, and so it's sort of like a braille communication. And then in electronics, the communication is entirely electrical, right? So I would like to hybridize those two universes. So to do that, I don't know anything about electronics, at least I didn't until we started this project.
Yeah.
So I turned to collaborators, people like Reg Penner, who's the world's expert electrochemist, people like Phil Collins, who's a physicist, who's been building single molecule circuits. And so we provide the biology side of things, they provide the electrochemistry, the physics side, and then it's just really exciting because you put creative students together in those sorts of rooms, together in a room, and all kinds of neat ideas come out.
Yeah, it's nice to get the students together from different labs as well
Yes.
on projects.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that we do for all of our collaborations is have weekly joint meetings between the laboratories that are involved, and that's actually really important for any sort of 50-50 type of collaboration.
Right, and it's a team
So,
effort to get this done,
exactly.
so.
It also keeps things on track, right? Because sometimes there's a tendency to drop the collaborations, right? If you're not in your collaborator's face, then sometimes they forget about you, or it gets lower priority. So if you meet every week with your collaborators, you're going to be a lot more successful because then everyone's accountable, right?
Yeah, and plus people like to know that other people are showing interest in their project.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure they depend on each other in some ways, because
Absolutely.
sometimes you can't do this till that's done. And
Yep, exactly.
can you talk a little bit about the features that you seek in a collaborator?
Oh.
Because you probably do collaborations outside of the campus too.
Yes, we do. So for collaborations, I like to find collaborators who make a commitment from the outset. So this is really important that the collaborator has to tell me, and I in fact will ask them, how important is this project to you? And if they can't tell me that it's going to be, if when we hand them material, that they're going to treat it as their highest priority, then I drop them. Because we can't collaborate with anyone who's not going to make this stuff really high priority. Because if it's just a low priority item, we'll do all this work, we'll get to the handoff point, and then it will die. So that's one thing I look for. The second thing is I also tell all collaborators in advance that our collaboration has to generate either papers or proposals going out the door. One of those two. We have to have deliverables at the end of this. We have to either be discovering new things, or we have to be, we definitely have to be discovering new things, but we have to be either reporting them or sending them out as proposals. And again, if I don't have the commitment from the collaborators, then we can't continue. And some of those projects end up dying by the wayside. So we definitely need that from the outset.
Has your success rate been pretty good with picking the collaborators?
You know,
Or
it's-
have many projects been left open?
It's been really good lately. We've been amazingly successful, I think, over the last 5 years. So once I figured out those, just being very upfront at the beginning,
Yes.
here's the expectation, we're going to do this, you're going to do this, the papers are going to be jointly co-authored, the proposals are going to be shared in this way. Working out all those details is really critical.
Yes.
So.
You know, if people don't go in with the same expectations, it's
Yeah.
a recipe for disaster.
Exactly.
It's true in business too. You really need to get everything on the table, or it just goes round and round and round. And,
That's right.
People have different expectations, and there's a lot of friction. So it's
I
true,
like-
the
I
business
just-
of science is the same.
And I like just being really upfront, telling people, okay, we're going to send out a grant. Your laboratory will get 50%. My laboratory will get 50%. When we write a paper, we're going to share co-authorship in this way. So even before the paper is written, that we know exactly what's going to happen. Because those issues become really tricky, and that's where collaborations fall apart.
Right.
So, and like in business, I imagine.
Yes.
So.
You've disclosed several inventions to the office, and one of the inventions, Office of Technology Alliance, is licensed to a company in Southern California. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that technology and how you hooked up with the company.
Sure.
Because actually the company, I didn't find the company, you found the company and brought the company to us, and we licensed the technology to the company.
That's true.
So, and that's very typical. Usually our inventors, our entrepreneurs are connected in some way with someone. Someone's called them, someone's seen an article published in a journal, and people will usually call, a company or an investor will call the PI first, and then the PIs will refer them to us. So we do get a lot of contacts that way.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Huh. Well, that's exactly what happened in this case. So in this case, the invention is to develop sensors for disease markers. And it goes back to that whole business about hybridizing biotech and electronics. So what we're doing is we're wiring viruses directly into electronic circuits. And so the idea here is you can engineer the viruses to recognize arbitrary molecules, cancer markers, cholera toxin if you want to detect cholera. and then we wire them directly into the circuit, and then send electricity through the viruses, and then watch in real time as the cancer marker or disease marker binds. So we licensed the first generation of this technology to Molecular Express, a company that's headquartered in Dominguez Hills, California, just up the freeway. And in that case, it's a really random event that actually brought us together. So in this case, actually, the Dean of Biosci, Sue Bryant, she was then Dean of Biosci, she was meeting with the CEO of Molecular Express, a guy named Gary Fuji. And Gary's one of our distinguished alums.
I think for a while Gary was on the CEO roundtable, and that might have been where they interacted. We have a group of CEOs that meets with the deans and the vice chancellors, and he may have been on that group, I'm not sure. Maybe that's how they connected.
That's interesting. Well, somehow Gary started talking to Sue about a problem that required phage display. That's the engineering of the viruses technology that I alluded to earlier that I learned at Genentech and it brought to UC Irvine.
Yes.
And Sue said, oh, you're in luck. We have someone here who does phage display.
Sue's thinking sponsored research.
That's right. And you know what? It worked out because so Sue put me in touch with Gary Fuji, and we sat down. It turned out that we actually had really different ideas. Gary wanted us to develop drug delivery systems for targeting cancer. I wanted to develop diagnostics for cancer. And what we ended up doing was sort of meeting in the middle, so that we discovered binders to cancer markers it would be useful for his drug delivery applications, and at the same time be useful for a diagnostic. And so by meeting in the middle, we ended up both getting our goals accomplished. And we did this by raising SBIR money to do that.
Okay, so you wrote SBIR grants, and you helped with a scientific plan on those.
Yes. Yeah, so these are R43 Small Business Innovation Research Awards, or STTR is another series.
Yes.
That's something technology transfer research.
Yes.
Anyway, so we've ended up writing a whole bunch of these between Molecular Express and my laboratory. And the format that we use that's actually been really successful, it's something that we've done quite a number of times, is I write all the science. So it's either me or students in my laboratory working with me who write the science portions, and I'm the academic PI. Gary writes all the business plan stuff. So you always have to show some, some commercial applicability and a plan to get the stuff out the door eventually. So Gary takes care of that. We take care of the phage display aspects, the science aspects. Sometimes we even bring in another collaborator. We've brought in other biologists to test things that are coming out of the laboratory, to test them in various animals. So we have all the collaborators together, and the award itself then goes to Molecular Express. So when the ones we've gotten awarded, I think.
Because the business comes to the business.
Exactly.
The SBIR comes back to the business.
Yeah, so the money goes to the business, and then there's a subcontract back to UCI and back to our own laboratory. And that's worked really well. It's been a great way for us to support research that is sort of applied. It would be a really tough sell for this research in a basic study section of the National Institutes of Health. That would be a really tough thing. But to an SBIR study section where they're looking for research that's going to get out the door eventually and go to the clinic, they're really much more interested in this. And so that's been...
It overlapped with your interests anyway.
That's right.
And it also has an engineering component to it, correct?
Yeah, it does actually. And for those engineering components, we even collaborate with people here in engineering, people like G.P. Lee. We've collaborated with Mark Bachman. So, where necessary, we'll bring whatever expertise we need.
I wonder if you could, since you're working at the interface of so many different areas, would it be possible for you to speak a little bit to how you see biology and chemistry and engineering interfacing in products and addressing problems, societal problems, or technology problems that we have today?
I'm glad you asked, Ronnie, because I like to call myself a chemist, and the reason is chemists solve problems. Okay, we're not just studying the universe. Our goal is to synthesize molecules that are going to go out and solve molecules. Or solve problems. Yeah, we're going to make new molecules that then have some new virtues, some new abilities that then can solve problems. So one of the areas I'm really excited about are technologies that are hybrids of organic chemistry and biology. So for example, polymers that have proteins directly incorporated in them. And these proteins could be, for example, enzymes that are catalyzing some reaction. And the polymers could be things like electrically conductive materials. So you basically then have wires that have proteins directly incorporated in them. And I'm really excited. We have some work coming out of the laboratory now that's reporting that sort of thing. And I think the applications for biosensing are going to be really exciting, but I also think the applications for directly sending electrons into these catalysts could also be really exciting for things like hydrogen generation, hydrogen gas generation for clean energy, where you might have electricity being generated by solar. And then enzymes are amazingly good at doing efficient catalysis, but you need some way then of feeding the electrons from the solar energy directly into the enzymes. Materials like that I'm really excited about. So I think chemistry at this interface of biology, organic synthesis, and engineering is a really exciting place right now. So there's some really neat
energy, clean tech,
biotechnologies, medicine, and organic synthesis as well. Because enzymes are also really effective at controlling the stereochemistry of their products, at controlling regiochemistry. And they do this using very low energy. These are reactions that are taking place in water at room temperature, without organic solvents, without harsh acids. This is the ultimate in organic synthesis. And I think that future is going to be led by new sets of materials that are just coming out right now. And I think it's going to be really exciting. So,
you're obviously excited about it. So.
I can't wait. So.
You're also co-chair of a recently formed global organization to bring together young scientists. And I think this is a pretty young group, right?
Yes, I'm the old guy.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the origin of the organization and the niche that you think it's going to fill?
Sure. So about a year ago, I was invited by the National Academy of Sciences to represent young U.S. scientists at the World Economics Forum meeting over the summer Davos meeting in China. And this was an amazing opportunity. So we had about 40 scientists from 35 different countries. And you never get to see scientists from Africa or Latin America, at least I don't. And it's just amazing to meet scientists like this. So we're in this room, and the motto of the World Economics Forum meetings is making the world a better place. And so the head of this meeting, and also the editor-in-chief of Science Magazine, comes in and says, hey, we brought you here for a reason. We're paying for your expensive trip to China because we want you guys to do something about making the world a better place. So we go to the bar. That's where the good brainstorming. Yeah.
People are more honest.
So we head to the bar and we start brainstorming like crazy. And after 2 days, we've generated enough ideas to fill this room. Okay, no joke. In fact, we got a room about this big. I had everyone write their ideas on papers, and we pasted them on the walls. Okay, so we have this room that's just filled with ideas about how to make science more effective in the developing world, how to reconnect the developed and the developing world together, how to improve science education, how to improve science communication to society. So you have all these ideas all over the wall.
Global brainstorming.
It's global brainstorming, yeah. And then I hand everyone some sticky pads, and everyone gets 3 votes. Okay, and so we go through, and if you want to vote, then you put your sticky, your Post-it note on the thing. And the amazing part is, at the end of this, our idea was we need some way to connect young scientists, to empower young scientists with a voice in influencing science policy, in science education, in influencing also the policies that affect young scientists.
Because you see it coming out of the National Academies of Science.
Yeah,
those are a little...
the old guys.
Yeah,
so the old guys dictate to us, basically, the policies that affect our tenure, that affect things like maternity leave. And there has to be some way of empowering young scientists who are currently disenfranchised and giving them a voice at the table. And I'm hoping that by doing this, we'll also be more effective at communicating science results to society, and also be more effective at improving science education, at inspiring young future scientists in this way. So out of this, we set up a new organization that we call the Global Young Academy, which is composed it's capped at a membership of 200 of the best young scientists around the world. To be a member, you have to be nominated by your National Academy. You have to be around the age of 35, so I would no longer qualify. And then you're nominated by the National Academies of the home countries, and then we'll have a peer review process to select the very best scientists. And the idea is basically to then empower these young scientists to go out and do stuff. We're setting up working groups that are going to focus on science education standards, that are going to focus on how do we more effectively interface with the media as scientists, and different issues like that. So and basically, it's our chance. It's our chance to speak and be heard for once. I'm really excited about it.
I know.
So-
I'm sure they are too, because they haven't really had a seat at the table.
And you know, the amazing part is we're getting astonishing support from the national academies.
Mhm.
The national academies are really interested in bringing in young scientists, the people I see in this room, and giving them a chance and in hearing from them and empowering them. And so our funding, for example, is coming from the national academies of the world. So there's actually an organization, an umbrella organization of all the national academies called the Inter-Academy Panel, and they're funding us to get this started. So that was my first venture capital raising experience.
So we went around and talked to them.
It was a lot of work. Yeah. So, yeah. In fact, actually, my the sort of the sell was I showed up at this meeting in London, and it had the presidents of about 100 national academies around the world, including the U.S. National Academy. So they're all in this room, and we have 10 minutes to make the pitch. And they must have liked us because at the end they gave us our venture capital seed money that's getting us started. So,
Nice.
thanks.
It's nice to be able to make one stop like that and get some money.
I guess so. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. If there were other meetings, I'd show up at those too.
We may be calling on you very soon to raise capital for our companies.
It's a deal.
So you're obviously very enthusiastic about your profession
Thanks.
and the future of your research, but I just wonder if you had to choose another profession,
Oh.
what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough call. Well, I think my latest obsession is cooking. And so if I had to do something else, I would want to be a chef. And I think this goes back to my intense desire to mix chemicals. And unfortunately, I've been kicked out of my own laboratory. I did have a bench for a while, and the students kind of sidled up to me and told me to get lost. Not in so many words, but I could tell they weren't exactly happy to have me hanging out with them all day.
Yeah.
So anyways, I don't have this outlet of mixing chemicals, which I really miss.
Mhm.
And so at the end of the day, I like going home. I have this stand mixer. I throw in a bunch of things, and great stuff comes back out that has lots of calories. And that's what I would do.
So
if I had
you
to-
just cooking desserts, or
Oh, no.
is that why it's lots of calories? Or?
Yeah, well,
Are you
I
cooking
li-
different?
I like both baking and regular
Okay.
cooking. The kind where you're at the stove and mixing stuff.
Mhm.
It's just really fun. But I have to tell you, Ronnie, this is my dream job.
Yes.
This is what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to teach. I've always wanted to have this lab of creative people that I can go back to with my crazy ideas. And the amazing part is watch them come to fruition. That has been my absolute dream. And I feel so, so lucky to be able to do this. I would do it, I shouldn't say this too loud, but I would do it for free. I really love getting a captive audience of students to talk about science with in my classrooms. I think that it's just an amazing privilege and it's an amazing honor. And I've also always wanted to be part of the University of California. I think what we do is remarkable, that their students are given a terrific opportunity to learn from world-class people and to do it at an affordable level. It's really an amazing thing. I've dreamt about being affiliated to the University of California, and it makes me run to work every day. So I'm absolutely thrilled. So.
But I think it also comes with a lot of pressures, and
That's
you
true.
have to find jobs for these people or places for them to go.
Yeah, that's true.
How is that going?
Well, I actually feel like we've turned a corner on that. So about a year ago, Ronnie, when the economy was truly in the doldrums, I had former students who were having a lot of trouble getting job interviews and stuff like that. And I have to tell you, over the last couple months, I think I've seen things turn around. We have one guy who's just put his CV out, and within literally 2 weeks, he had 3
Wow.
hits. And I thought that was awesome. In fact, every place he's mailed his CV, he's gotten an interview. And that's really cool.
Somebody's hiring.
Yeah, so there's actually some pent-up demand for talented people that I'm starting to see. And I wasn't seeing this a year ago. So I really feel like the economy is turning the corner, at least in my own anecdotal indicators of just one professor and his former students.
So don't get too bogged down in what you hear. Based on what's happening, it seems
There are some jobs that are out there. There really are. There are jobs that are being created that I wasn't seeing a year ago. And I think that's a cause for great optimism.
Yeah, sounds makes me optimistic. So I think at this point I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience. If you'd like to ask Greg anything, pretty much anything, he can decide if he wants to answer it. Especially questions I didn't ask. Any thoughts from anyone?
Maybe in the middle.
When you were conducting your academic job search, how was your industrial postdoc perceived, and did you have to explain it to in the interview process?
Well, Yeah, that's a great question, and that goes back to the fact that I thought I was going to kill the career. So I didn't mention this, but I had an amazingly productive postdoc. So I published 10 first author papers as a postdoc. And so when I was conducting the search, although my letterhead said Genentech on it, I very prominently displayed the papers. And I think that was the currency that got me the job. The other thing is I was working, my advisor, Jim Wells, the guy who went to start Synesis, was elected to the National Academy when I was a postdoc. And so he had this sort of really prominent position about that point. So he was a known quantity. So having a letter from him made a huge difference as well. So, you know, it could have gone the other way, but I was really lucky. I had good credentials that were supporting me and really pushing hard for me. So, but it's definitely true. I heard from other faculty who were on job searches that you know, industrial postdocs, people who were not very productive as postdocs, definitely were not getting the hits. So, and I was really nervous about that as well.
So your previous point too was publish.
Like crazy.
Even if you're in industry, you had lots and lots of papers to show for it.
Yeah.
That certainly helped.
It really did. And you know, the amazing part was when I was at Genentech, the parking lot was filled on the weekends. The scientists were publishing like crazy there. And that's the currency, you know, either they're publishing or they're patenting. And I think if you're coming out of industry to come back to academics, we're looking for patents because we know you can't publish a lot. But, you know, patents are a currency. They're evidence of tangible accomplishment, of discovery.
Well, they should be.
They should be,
and
absolutely.
We definitely need the university to recognize those more than they do.
That's right. Yeah, so I think we're turning a corner here. So I was on a job search committee last year in our department, and our attitude was one of if we saw applications coming from industry, we were looking for presentations, we were looking for patents, we were looking for sort of a different currency than just straight out publications, which is what you look for if you're hiring new faculty coming straight out of academics.
Right.
So, and we gave them a shot. So, the opportunities are there. And Siddipta?
Yeah, so how different is the work ethics when you go to like from academics to industry?
That's a great question. So, well, I just said that the parking lot was full on weekends. These are scientists who are, you know, making a ton of money a year and are working just like graduate students. They're working as hard as graduate students. It blew me away. I didn't expect that. You know, they're working 60, 80 hours a week. I was really impressed by that. The work ethic at a place like Genentech, where the employees feel highly, highly motivated, extremely well rewarded, they were really impressive. And what I found in my own laboratory here at UC Irvine is our students are equally hard driving. I know if I show up on a Saturday evening that I'll find someone in my laboratory working, that I can come in at 7 a.m. on Sunday and there'll be someone here. I mean, it's amazing. You know, at 6 p.m. I see people just starting to set up experiments because they're going to be here for a few hours. And so I guess at the companies that you would want to work for, Siddipta, you'll find the work ethic is pretty similar. That it's not like a paradise where everyone just kind of kicks back. That those companies are great because their scientists are charging hard and are working really hard and pushing stuff out the door. And that's what you would want, right? You'd want to be at a place where you can publish like crazy. And to do that, as you know, you have to work really, really hard. So.
And at a small company, you can't really get lost very well. People
That's right.
know where you are, and
Yeah.
there's a lot needed from you.
And you have to wear a lot of hats as well at a smaller company.
Absolutely.
Right? They don't
Great
have an
experience.
expert in, you know, biophysics or whatever. You have to be the expert in biophysics and the expert in protein synthesis or protein expressions.
And
So.
you have to be very proactive and move your project forward. Even if the expertise is not at the company, you need to find it and take charge of your project.
That's right. That's right. And learn it and very quickly find some way to find
Right.
equipment or whatever. So. And I saw a question in the back.
Yeah, I was almost asking a similar question, but I changed my mind. Because I was trying to ask you how many hours a day you work as a graduate student, a postdoc, or faculty.
Oh, okay.
But now I changed it because get similar numbers.
Well,
my question is right now is how you arrange the time with as a faculty and also with your wife or your kids.
Yeah, yeah. This is
Work-life balance.
The work-life balance is a huge issue.
Plus
now.
the cooking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus the vice president of Nicaragua yesterday.
It's a huge challenge. So that's actually one of the issues that our Global Young Academy wants to discuss, actually, because I'll be honest, it's out of joint. I mean, I think in this job you have to work amazingly hard. So I get up at 5 in the morning every day. I work out for an hour, read the newspaper really fast, and then I start answering emails. And the downside of being a co-chair of this global thing is that all the emails from Asia have accumulated in the middle of the night. And so you wake up in the morning and there's like 50 emails that you have to like dash off replies to. So I do that for like an hour. And then I come to work, I teach 8 to 10, and then I stop by the lab. That's the fun part of my day. It's actually the fun part is just walking around the lab and saying hello to people, seeing what they're up to. And then I try to make it home by a reasonable hour. That's a rule that my wife and I discussed at some point, and I decided, and she encouraged me, that I wanted to make it home to eat dinner with her every night. And that's sort of our balance. And so I'm always home by 7 o'clock. That's my.
I have no complaints.
And yeah, and if I'm not too tired, I cook, and then I go back to work by about 7:45 to 8 or so, and then I work for another hour, and then I have 10 minutes of fun. I found I have to set aside some time to read, read novels or something like that. And wind down, exactly. Otherwise, I'm up all night just
Yeah, and you have to get
thinking
up at 5
about-
again, so you need to get.
Exactly. So there's sort of there's a little bit of time, but it's very regimented, is what I'm trying to say. It's imperfect. Oh, I also, but the great thing I started doing when I was a graduate student, and I've always encouraged my own students to do this, is to take 1 day a week off. And I don't care what that day a week is. It could be Monday, if you like to take Mondays off, or it can be Sunday. And I think most of my students do Sunday, and I do Sunday as well. But during that Sunday, I really don't do very much work at all. Sometimes I do a little bit because I get sucked into it. But I really, really try very hard to keep that 1 day in reserve off. And I feel like, for me, that's enough to get me reset. Otherwise, if I try to work 7 days a week, I start to feel overwhelmed. I start to feel depressed. So the 1 day a week really makes a huge difference. So, but I think dialing that in has been a constant experiment. As a graduate student, I didn't take the day a week off, and I almost went crazy. I mean, it was just so
Probably no one else
intense.
did either.
It was, yeah. But the great thing that happened was my friend, who had the bench next to me, took me fishing one day.
Oh.
So this guy takes me out fishing, and I was able to realize that, this fishing actually made me more productive. That when I got back to lab, I wanted to work harder. That I was working too hard to the point where my productivity was going back the other way. And so
You didn't catch anything?
Is
that what it was? Is that what it was?
I pretend that you don't have to catch anything with me. That I'm just happy to be standing around and standing in nature, not thinking about anything but the flies that are landing on the lake.
That's why you're a good researcher.
So-
You don't have to catch anything. We're just studying.
Message to the students. But yeah, it's true. I think that's one of the biggest challenges for doing something that you love, and it's all-consuming, is that you do want to do it almost too much to the point where you become less effective at it. And it's a huge, huge challenge, and it's something you're constantly tinkering with. And I haven't quite figured it out, to be honest. I think if I had kids, I don't have kids. If I had kids, it would take a different formula that I really, really haven't figured out yet. And I'm in awe, actually, of my colleagues who are not tenured,
Right.
who are pushing really hard for tenure, and are having children. And I think kudos to them. I mean, it's just
It's
amazing.
challenging.
It's really challenging. So it's really impressive. So, anyway, thanks for asking. I think it's a tough question. So.
Go ahead.
I was wondering if you went through some lifetimes during the graduate studies or a postdoc or as a professor, and then how you come and be focused back into research and research.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Okay, so the question was, what about the rough times, right? And I would be totally lying to you if I said that we didn't have rough times. We're constantly having rough times as part of science. And Sherry Rowland, my colleague who won the Nobel Prize in 1995 in chemistry, once told me that the difference between winning the Nobel Prize and being in the dumps of a career, feeling completely unsuccessful, was about the width of a bicycle tire. It was about that the difference is so minor between the highest of highs of total success and the lowest of lows. And my strategy is I celebrate everything. Okay, so when we send out a paper, I celebrate that. I don't like to celebrate with the students because I don't want to give them too much false hopes. But my wife and I usually have like a candy bar, or we'll go out to dinner with my wife. I'll celebrate everything that's possible to be celebrated. Sending out a grant proposal, not even getting the grant proposal funded, just sending it out, that deserves a celebration. Sending it, not even getting the paper published, that deserves celebration. So any opportunity you have to declare success, because there's plenty of other opportunities where you're going to feel walloped and kicked in the stomach for the things that get rejected or don't fly, the experiments that you thought were going to work that don't get to work. And as a graduate student, I had a lot of opportunity to experience that. And as I'm sure everyone in this audience who does science has experienced it. But my strategy has been one of just trying to have the highs carry you through the lows. Because one of the things about being a scientist is it's so topsy-turvy. You feel this sort of euphoria of ultimate high, and then you feel like this incredible depression, that sort of hits so to try to moderate those out just by taking the highs and trying to use the highs to fill in the gaps between the lows. So, and I will tell you, we've had rough patches in every stage of my career. That there's been no even month where we've gone and it's been complete success. That there's been stuff that's failed that I didn't want to fail, and rejection after rejection that I didn't want to see. It's just part of the job. And I think one of the things you have to learn pretty early on is to develop kind of a tough skin, a tough exoskeleton, as I like to think of it, and not really let those arrows and slings and stones hit you too hard. You kind of have to take them, learn from them, and then just move on. Yeah, just move on, because if you get too fixated on those things, then you really don't go on to the next thing. So you let the good things carry you. You don't get too fixated on the bad things, and another thing is surround yourself with positive people. Okay, so if you're surrounded by people who love what they're doing, who are enthusiastic about what they're doing, then it also helps you, because they're telling you about something that they did great in their day, and that helps carry you through those things. So try to cultivate a support group. I found this especially important when I was a graduate student, because as a graduate student, you're kind of off on your own. I had an advisor who was amazingly hands-off. I talked to him maybe once every 3 months or something like that. And so, you're always kind of feeling like things are down in the pits. And so I was really fortunate to have great friends that kind of carried me through those things. So all those are my advice. So take the highs, try to moderate out the lows, surround yourself by positive people, and above all, don't get fixated on the negative. So, thanks.
You mentioned the importance of meetings, especially in collaboration. I was wondering, could you give me your opinion on, especially from a student and postdoc perspective, on the balance between time in meetings and time working on the project in the lab?
Yeah. So it's definitely, I think you phrased the question exactly right, which is the perspective of a graduate student / postdoc is totally different than the perspective of the PI. Okay, so from the PI's perspective, you can't have enough meetings, because the meetings are the only time I get to see the results. It's the only time I get to talk about, did you heat it up to 37 degrees instead of 25 degrees? Did you try this other thing? So for me, that's the fun part of doing science. And so for me, I can't have enough meetings. But having said that, I know that it also is counterproductive after a while. That if I'm meeting with people on a daily basis, if I'm in their face constantly about, did you do this experiment this way, did you do it that way, then the productivity starts to drop very, very quickly. And this is especially important for collaborations, right? Because if I start showing up over there and pester my collaborators in their laboratories, it's going to create huge problems. And it also is difficult. Many of our collaborations involve international scientists. For example, we have a collaboration with a group in Thailand, and so we meet by Skype. So we do video conferencing by Skype, and it works surprisingly well. But you can't set that kind of thing up more than once a month because people have schedules and it's 14-hour time difference to Bangkok. So it becomes really challenging to do. So I guess you want the details to be an effective scientist. You need those details. You need to be obsessed about the small details. But if you're getting the small details more than once a month, or sorry, more than once a week, then that's too much. That you're not then giving people a chance to figure out stuff for themselves and to develop as scientists, as independent scientists themselves. So, and I think I saw effective managers at Genentech also working at that level as well. So even in an environment where you're not necessarily training people, formally, you're still informally training people, and you still want that sort of level of contact. Enough contacts that you do get to see the details, that you're wired in, you're helping to the maximum efficiency, but not so much that you're slowing things down.
Not micromanaging.
Exactly, that's a tough thing. And Miranda?
Seeing as you didn't, after 6 months, have an advisor at Genentech, who tended to check up on you and how often?
Yeah, so this was an amazing thing. So the lab was empty, but there was one other postdoc there, a guy named Deb Sidhu, and Deb was senior to me, so he was maybe a year or two ahead of me. And Genentech said, geez, we can't lose this phage display technology, so they immediately promoted Deb to scientist. So Deb stayed on as scientist, and I stayed on as postdoc, and the two of us worked together. Basically, I was the very first postdoc trained in Deb's lab, and we worked side by side for 2 years. It was an amazing experience. So Deb and I were a team. And Deb has actually gone on to a great academic career at University of Toronto. He recently moved from Genentech to University of Toronto, which also illustrates that there is a directionality, that there is a bidirectionality to this between industry and academics. But in addition, Genentech assigned to me a senior scientist to kind of look out after me and give me my annual reviews. The person who would tell me, I think you're about a B+ scientist, that you haven't discovered any therapies for us, and what you're doing is really, interesting intellectual curiosity, but not going to make us any money. So anyway, so they assigned a senior scientist to look after things and sign off on the bills. Someone had to, and there was a controller involved and things like that. So there was management that was kind of looking in on things, but it was an amazingly hands-off period. I didn't have someone meeting with me once a week. I didn't have, Deb and I would meet daily for lunch. That was about it. I mean, it was just an amazing opportunity to expand as a scientist. So it was pretty unique, though.
Yeah. Well, we should probably wrap this up. Thank
Great.
you so much for giving
My
us your
pleasure.
time today. Very much appreciated.
Thanks so much, everyone, for coming out. I'm really honored to have you here.
It was very interesting.
Thanks.
Thank you for taking.
My pleasure.